Hello, this should be a fairly short video. I'm just going to go over the homework answers from chapter 1. We started with 1-4, number 4, which is on, if the book is, if it has page numbers, is on page 14. It goes like this. In a single sentence, contrast microeconomics, macroeconomics. Next, categorize each of the following issues as a microeconomic issue, a macroeconomic issue, or not an economic issue. And the first of these things is a variable, and it is the national unemployment rate. Okay, so the sentence that we're looking for should go something like this. Microeconomics is the study of resource allocation by firms, households, and industries. We use households as like a blanket term for individuals as well as households of that household unit that makes decisions together. And macro studies allocation of whole economies. So I interrupted myself and I'll reread that. Microeconomics is the study of resource allocation by firms, households, and industries, and macro studies allocations of whole economies. So you hopefully have on your paper some kind of sentence like that. And this first event, the national unemployment rate, well, it has the word national in it, so it tells us pretty clearly if it has the word national in it, it's macro. So to write out an explained answer, your answer should say it's a macro issue because it includes the word national, or it's a national variable. The second one, letter B, the decision of a worker to work overtime or not. Does that sound like a national event? No. That is micro. And the reason it's micro is because it's about an individual or a household's decision making. And you might have thought, that's not an economic issue, it's too small, or something like that. Perhaps you thought that. Oh, it's quite an economic issue. In fact, in micro, we will actually be able to model that exact decision and how that can change with variables that the person might face changing in their lives. So we have that to look forward to. Letter C, a family's choice to have a baby. Does this sound like maybe it's not an economic issue? I think it's meant to sound like it's not an economic issue, but this is something that we could call micro. It's a household decision. And I know it's an economic issue because I don't have it here in front of me where I heard this, but I understand there has been at least one study done that shows that there, year after year, tends to be a spike in births just before New Year's Day, before New Year's Eve, I guess, New Year's Eve or before, just before the turning of a new year. Any guesses as to why that might be? Is it because something happened 9 months before? Love is in the air or something? Well, maybe, but the argument is that people induce labor or tend to induce labor more frequently right at the end of the year, because when you have that child in that year, that is a dependent for that tax year. It raises your number of dependents for the entire year. But if you wait just a few more days and have the baby, you lose that tax deduction for that year, previous year. So an economic decision? Oh yes. How about letter D? The rate of growth of the money supply. Well, the money supply might affect individuals, households, and industries, but that's because it affects everyone. That's a national event. The money supply pertains to a nation's currency, and so that is macro because it's a national event or national variable. Letter E, the national government's budget deficit. Macro because it has that word national in it. Letter F, a student's allocation of study time across 2 subjects. Does this sound like a non-economic issue? It is an economic issue because we're studying the allocation of society, how society allocates its scarce resources. And here, time is the resource of interest. I can study this or I can study that. Time is a resource, so we're looking at how this individual might allocate the resource across time. And we're actually going to look at that, a first model of that, just get our feet wet in that exact question in Chapter 2. That's the video I'm going to make next. Really, we're going to model just that. So in case I wasn't clear, that is micro because it's an individual or household decision. So that's number 4. The next question we are looking at is number 7. Explain in your own words the rationality assumption and contrast it with the assumption of bounded rationality proposed by the adherents of behavioral economics. So in our discussions, I haven't talked about bounded rationality. I did mention rationality, but that's something that's in your book, and you do have to read your book. I mean, you have to go in there. That's just part of the deal. So occasionally there are these terms that you'll find that you have to go back and figure out what they're talking about. This is one of those. So rationality, what's implied by that word is that people make decisions based on their self-interest that benefit or at least not hurt themselves, and they make those decisions with complete information, with the information that's there. So bounded rationality, alternatives that we face when we're looking to make a decision might be bounded or limited more than they really are. In our minds, we might not be aware of all the choices we face. Bounded rationality alternatives sets are bounded, more bounded than individuals realize. I can't speak today. Alternative sets are more bounded than individuals realize. Choices are made within limited sets, therefore not always in their best self-interest. So my personal study of bounded rationality, the role it's played in my analysis of things, I did a presentation in Canada, June of 2019. Yeah, June of 2019, I got a trip to Canada to go up and present a paper on the American women's topless movement. And in my paper, in this piece of research, I got to explore bounded rationality and the role that plays in the American women's topless movement. You see, Ocean City, Maryland was the target of some groups of advocates for women's toplessness, and I was sort of privy to that because I worked there in the summertime, and so I saw an opportunity to study that movement a little bit. It's not been done before, so that's what I did, and I got a trip to Canada out of it. It's pretty good. The idea of the movement goes something like this. Of course, men can walk around in our society topless, and that's not against the law, and it's part of social norms. It's generally acceptable in, at least in the summertime, and most like outdoor places, but it's not for women. And so this is an equity issue, right? Men can do it, women can't do it. In fact, it's in some places and cases a legal issue because it's legal for men to do it and not for women to do it. I think this is all background stuff we're all familiar with. Okay. Now, why is it that way? The argument goes, it must go, that women's breasts are sexual organs, and so that's why they require being covered up. Different from men's breasts. Okay. But here's the bounded rationality aspect of this. Suppose we treat women's breasts as society as sexual organs because that's all we've ever known them to be. And we don't identify with alternatives outside of those bounds that we've always known. If you look at these advocates of the women's topless movement, if you look at their websites and their information that they put out there, they have some pretty compelling evidence that the difference between men's breasts and women's breasts have really nothing to do with sex. The only difference is that women's breasts serve to feed infants. And so then when the opponents of the topless movement argue this is a family beach resort, things like this, they say, well, what's more family than that? I don't particularly have a horse in the race. I can see people wanting to be able to go on vacation and just not have their rationality, the bounds of their rationality challenged. That's what vacation's about, is relaxing, not getting someone else's politics or whatever you might want to call this issue. But of course, I studied their movement. I understand the point that they're trying to make as well. So I don't have a horse in the race, but that is my example of bounded rationality, because that's the example that's been close to me. I think I've answered the heck out of 1-7. So let's look at what's next. It should be 1-8. That reads like this. Why does the assumption of bounded rationality suggest that people might want to use rules of thumb to guide their decision making instead of considering every possible choice available to them? Well, hopefully you went back in your books and you found some kind of an answer to this. Generally, rules of thumb are easier. They give us low-cost ways to decide things, even if there might be better alternatives that we don't consider. The question at hand of whether bounded rationality is major shortcoming is, can we adapt? Or we always just do what we've always done just because it's easier. So in the topless example, it's just easier to say, oh, that's what they are, leave things alone, and I'm not going on vacation to consider all these facets of this event of a person being topless, a woman being topless in front of me. So that's why we use rules of thumb. They're usually a low-cost way to make decisions. They're just easier. And that's really the answer to number 8. It's pretty short, pretty simple, I think. Then number 12 is what we did next. Which of the following predictions appear to follow from a model based on the assumption that rational, self-interested individuals respond to incentives? Okay. For every 10 exam points Myrna must earn in order to pass her economics course and meet her graduation requirements, she will study 1 additional hour for her economics test next week. So she has to study to earn the points. So is she responding to incentives? And I think the answer is yes, because the grades are rewarding her behavior of studying that hour. Behavior is adjusting because of the temptation of those points. It's response. It's behavioral response. It's an incentive-induced behavior. Let's compare that to letter B. What's letter B here? A coin toss will best predict Leonardo's decision about whether to purchase an expensive business suit or an inexpensive casual outfit to wear next week when he interviews for a high-paying job he is seeking. Is his decision of what to buy based on the incentive of maybe earning more money? No. That coin toss is a chance event. It's not a decision being made by incentives. Just checking my time here. Okay. Then the next one is Celeste, who uses earnings from her regularly scheduled hours of part-time work to pay for her room and board at college, will decide to purchase and download a newly released video this week only if she's able to work 2 additional hours. So, is there an incentive-based decision being made here? The answer is yes. She's willing to work. Sounds like looking to work 2 additional hours, and the money she can make, it's not for the money, it's for this video that she can get that's inducing her to work 2 additional hours if she can get it. So that is a yes. That is responding to incentives. On to number 15. Consider the following statements based on positive economic analysis that assumes all other things remain constant. For each, list one other thing that might change and thus offset the outcome stated. So again, positive economic analysis, if you thought about that adjective positive there a little bit, you might say, that's weird. It doesn't mean happy and cheery. You had to go back and look. Positive economic analysis These are things that are just based in data or fact. Normative analysis or normative economic statements are directives, or they call them prescriptive. So they can a normative statement is the opposite of a positive statement. And a normative statement is something like they ought to do this or they should do that. See how that's a prescription? It's telling somebody what they should do. Terms like that, ought to, should, would be better to, things like that. These are indicative of normative statements, and good economic research is actually positive. That's why economists are known for being so very interesting. So with this, we're interested in what else could be happening that could affect these things that are happening. So let's see if I can make sense of this. Increased demand for laptop computers will drive up their price. Everybody see how that should occur? People want it more. If you want something more, and then there's another person there who also wants it more, sellers ought to be moving up prices, because price, we call it the rationing mechanism, determines who's going to get it. It's people who are willing to pay, willing or able to pay for it. But is there anything else that could be causing this observed increase in the price? Sure. Could be that computer manufacturers aren't making as many computers. So that's a decrease in supply. That would push up the price. That could push up the price as well. Do I have any other examples in my answers here? I just did that off the top of my head. What I had in my notes from looking at this in the past, even if the forecast is correct about demand, the cost to produce laptops has been falling. That's why real prices haven't risen. What? Real prices haven't risen. I thought it was... Oh, it's a prediction that it will drive up their price. Okay. Okay, I think everybody watching this understood something I didn't understand because I'm too busy reading it aloud to think about it. The prediction that it will drive up their price would come true with increases in demand, but the increases in demand might coincide with computers being built more cheaply. That's a better answer than the first thing I gave off the cuff. And that's actually what's happened over time with computers. We know computer demand is way up, but the prices of computers has really not risen all that much for the past 10 or 20 years, particularly if you factor in what you're buying, the capability of these things. And that's because while demand has gone up and up and up, it's going to become cheaper and cheaper to produce them. So just demand is not a good forecast of higher prices. That's the moral of that story. I hope that made sense. Then the next event was falling gasoline prices will result in additional vacation travel. That seems reasonable. Seems like a reasonable forecast. Oh, gas prices are going down. Oil prices fell today, actually, as I looked at this. So that should drive down the gas prices a little. So will that result in additional vacation travel? Maybe. Maybe not. Because maybe the thing that's lowering the gas prices is also keeping people at home. Coronavirus. So your forecast of one thing leading to another might make sense, but it's probably not an adequate forecast, and I think that's what's going on now, actually. So the answer that I had written in the past for letter B was not if there is a major, another different example, not if there's a major snowstorm in the Northeast. So we could have falling gas prices, and there won't be additional travel. Weather events could do that, or joint causation, such as coronavirus causing the gas prices to be lower because demand is down for gas across the board, is also causing travel to fall off the map. So letter C, let's see what letter C is. A reduction of income tax rates will result in more people working. It seems like a plausible cause and effect. Is there anything else that could mess that up? What I thought about in the past was this will almost surely also result in people enjoying more leisure, not just more work. That's a fun one. And in micro, that's another thing we model for a household or individual decision. If you or I get a raise, does it always make us work more? My whole lifestyle is engineered around getting advanced degrees so that I can work at my convenience. I'm doing this when it fit my schedule, making this video when it fit my schedule. Not a lot of jobs are like that. So I could probably make more money doing something else, but I choose to forego additional money to buy leisure. So that might cause lower tax rates not to cause necessarily a large jump in employment, because people do that. And particularly in micro, we'll actually be able to model that so we can discuss it more later. I hope this little brief makes sense. Then we did number 19, which I think is on my other page over here. No, it isn't. Where is it? There it is. Sorry. During her years of college, Dominique discovered that her three favorite subjects were astronomy, chemistry, and political science. She chose to major in astronomy because she had seen data indicating that science majors earn higher than average wages, and because she liked astronomy better than both chemistry and political science. Upon graduation, however, she learned that average wages in chemistry fields were 20% higher than average wages earned by astronomers. So in other words, her forecast was wrong. Did Dominique's behavior violate the rationality assumption? Well, she's not going to make the money, the relative money, across the three fields that she thought she was going to. Does that mean she was irrational to have made that decision? I think in your heart or your gut, you know the answer is no. But here, the important thing is why. With the information that she had when she made the decision, was it her best decision in her self-interest? She thought it would pay more, and she liked it. So the answer is yes, it was a rational decision. We can make rational decisions that don't work out very well because events change. But we make decisions with the information that we have. And of course, the challenge to that is, well, we don't have enough information, we're bounded. That's bounded rationality, that's what that's about. But we make decisions with the information we have, and sometimes they turn out to not be the best decision that we might have made, but that's the nature of information. We don't have a crystal ball, we don't know the future, we can't know everything. The other thing that I would point out to support the claim that the answer is no, it was still rational, would be that many, if not most of you who are taking the time to watch this, you're not majoring in the thing that's necessarily going to pay you the most, or the field that necessarily does pay the most to people. You are majoring in a thing that makes the most sense for you as an individual. Just because a field pays more doesn't mean that I will necessarily make more in that field if I'm going to be terrible at it because I hate it. Right? That's rational. That's the information that I have that maybe an observer, like a textbook author or someone, wouldn't have about me. So I think I've answered that thing. And hopefully with the support I gave as examples, that your answers will make sense to you. And that's all I have for this video.